Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome back if you're a returning subscriber, and like, share and subscribe. So quick update, the offer I got rejected. I made an offer on a dingy ass apartment. It was listed at $899. I put in a cheeky offer of $750, but it was falling apart. The property is worth about 1.1 million. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to get in, fix it up, live in it for a year or two until imali yami ihlangane, and then rent it out. I would obviously be cash positive from year one. I did the numbers because I would have bought at a low property price, even though I would have done the fixing, which I looked at the cost that they sent me, would cost me between 100 and 150,000, which would put it at 900. So with rental it would make sense, but with flipping it wouldn't, because of the transfer costs essentially. So I'm sharing that to tell you guys that I took an L and I'm still standing. I'm still fine. I haven't died. But if I hadn't put in the offer, then I wouldn't have known that I couldn't put in the offer. But yeah, today we're doing something a bit different. We're doing short-term lets. It's something that I'm flirting with. I don't have the facilities yet, but it's something that's always been at the back of my mind. How do you value it? How do you think about it? So this is a website I came across, and it basically tells us, or it gives us metrics, which is numbers or parameters that we put in to our short-term model. I don't have a short-term model built or fleshed out just yet. It's something, like I said, that I'm thinking about, but this is how I would go about parameterizing inputs into my model. The idea being, I would want to compare, I want a property in this place, Masita Gqeberha. The property Gqeberha, is it best for me to 100% short-term let it, or is it best to split short-term versus long-term let? Or should I just get a long-term tenant and keep it pushing? That's the kind of thing that these type of metrics would help you, determine if you were dealing with it in a model environment. Okay, so it's about the average daily rate, which peaks at about 1.5 in January, and in October it's as low as 1,000 rand. So self-explanatory, average daily rate. Over the course of the year, you're looking at about 1,300 rand a night. In terms of occupancy, this is very important. Over the course of the year, you're seeing average 37%. Occupancy in June, winter months, you're seeing as low as 28%, and in December it peaks at about 48%. What that is basically telling you is that for outside of the 37, which is the 63%, you need to be comfortable footing the bill for your apartment or your house or your townhouse. And then June, it even gets worse. Outside of the 28, which is about 72%, you need to be confident and you need to be able to foot the bill for that percentage. It's only in December where you've got a 50-50. Again, 50-50 is quite high. So you need to have a lot of money on hand to keep the apartment running, or to keep the complex running, or the townhouse running, whatever, in the seasons, or not in the seasons, in the times where you're not fully booked. It also speaks to you're going to have to be able to save the money that you get when you are booked. Probably prepare a bit of your expensive and save money so that there's something to draw on in times of downtime. And then this is revenue per month. So you're seeing December is about 22,000. Whereas rest of the year you're seeing about 13,900 during the month. Again, that's the kind of amount that you'd want to compare with your monthly costs. So if the bond is 8k, the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality is 500, and then the levies is 1,000. That's 9,500. So on average, if I'm receiving 13,900, then I'm making about 3,500. But in June, it's 9,796. Maybe I have a shortfall. What do I do in the winter months? December's nice. I'm getting a windfall of 22,000. Am I able to save some of that to help me through, the quieter months? That's the kind of thing. I also want to point out that this is what Gqeberha looks like. Let me move this for you. This is essentially what Gqeberha looks like, and you've got a lot of Airbnb listings in the Summerstrand area. That's nice and near the beach. A boardwalk and all of that is there. You've got some Humwood, also very nice, very high end. They've got a very nice version active that's also very close to the harbor. What we also know is that Summerstrand Humwood area is also where Nelson Mandela Bay University has one of their campuses. So you've also got a student opportunity if those options I gave you where I said it's either long term or it's short term. You could have a student combined with a short term let. So students mhlambe February up until November, and then December, January, you've got short term tenants coming in. There's an opportunity there to flesh that out. If you are in the student accommodation business, please comment down below. That's always something that I've been passionate about, but I've always, looked in from the outside. So just let us know if you're in the student accommodation. If you're in the Airbnb, please also let us know. Tell us which city in Cape Town you're in and how do you deal with everything. How do you deal with cleaning? How do you deal with check-ins? How do you deal with, cancellations? All of that. Let us know. Okay, I'm gonna go to insights. What we're basically going to be looking at here is basically the trends, like it says. Let me minimize myself. Okay, we're basically going to be looking at the trends. So this is telling us about future demand. What you're basically seeing is future demand ticks up in your second week of December, which makes sense, right? Because people start getting off of work. Big days start around December. You're seeing about 300 bookings. While you still got a majority still being unbooked. So at the moment they're showing us the 300 are booked, but they're expecting about 450. That's what the future demand speaks to. So there's still capacity for those type of bookings. That's what they're anticipating. But obviously the more further you move out, the more time there is for those apartments to be booked. That's basically just showing us volumes, and then it's also telling us about the rates. So it's basically telling us the rates that we're expecting about 1.3 in May of 2027, but in December the rates that are being expected are basically about 2.5k. Yeah, if you're reading on the right hand side axis. What you also want to know is the booking lead time. So for how far ahead are people making their bookings? What you're basically seeing here is 0 to 7 days, that's the purple, and then you're seeing 8 to 30 days, which is about 1 to 4 weeks, that's the green, and so forth. And then 90 plus is about 3 months. So you'll see people are very serious about December wabo. You're seeing around, again, second week of December up until first week of January, people are booking December well in time. So December 26th, 47% of people booked that 3 months in advance. So if you're doing the student plus short-term let combo, then December has to be available and it has to be listed by September so that people can see it, book it 3 months in advance and lock it in. Then you've also got the rate analysis, which is basically telling us how much are these going for. You've got the available rate and you've got the booked rate. So two things. What we're basically seeing, let's say we're in Jan 2024, we're seeing an available rate of 1k and a booked rate of 1k. Granted, the axis is quite tight. Maybe let's look here. So an available rate of 1k and a booked rate of 2k. Two things we can infer from that. One, the higher end apartments, which tend to be more expensive at 2k, are the ones that are booked because they're nicer. Or it could be that the lower end apartments aren't booked, and then people tend to be decreasing their rates. Maybe they're not lower end apartments, maybe they're also regular apartments, but because they haven't been picked yet, they lower their their prices or put discounts on, and that's basically what you're basically seeing here. That's why they're coming out cheaper. What is also quite interesting is looking at the booked rate relative to the prior year booked rate. That's what you're basically seeing here, right? So that's the year-on-year increase that you would put into your model. Again, these are inputs that you would use to put into a separate model, much like my long-term, rental model. Tell you when you're going to break even, if you're going to break even, and should you bother with this investment at all. So these are simply input parameters that you would use for something like that. And something like a rate analysis year-on-year is where you would say, okay, this year my average daily rate was 1,000, and then next year let's put 10% on that, 1.1. That's the kind of thing you'd want to put in a model and say, if I've got a holding period of 5 years, what does this investment look like? And then this is the monthly booking lead time, like I said. So you will see that December is quite a popular month, with people, or 21% of bookings coming 90 in advance for December, 14% coming 2 months in advance, and 23% coming about a month in advance. January is also much of the same, but again, January is typically, because of the beginning of January, as a spillover from December. So that's just something to be mindful of, because who's traveling in January? Very few people. And then November, same thing. Some people take extended leave, start a bit early. So that's basically what you are seeing there. So very few people will book a November well in advance, but it's there. It's about 12% that will book it 3 months in advance. That's the monthly booking lead time. That gives you an understanding of how secure your income is going to be should you list in Airbnb. What we're looking at here is the previous year demand. You had strong demand. I want to say April. April, we know why. It's Easter holidays, right? Everyone is home, families are together. So April, May, that's healthy. And then obviously December, Jan, beginning of Feb. So that's also quite healthy. Dare I say end of November, December, Jan, that area, or that periods are quite popular. Same thing in the current year, December, Jan, beginning of February. Healthy, very healthy periods for you as a Airbnb landlord. When we go into the next one, it's basically showing us the rates, right? So here it's basically showing me there's a 41% occupancy. The average rate is about 1.3. So nothing really special about August. The rates are pretty standard. It's about 1.2 and a half, 1.3. Same thing with September, nothing really spiking. Even with that public holiday, again, because it's a Wednesday, so I don't know, weekend. So that might be, a bit, off-putting to some people. You're gonna forgive me. And then there's October here. So again, very low, nothing really special happening in October, nothing much happening in November again. December comes in and suddenly it goes from 1,250 a month to about 1.3, 1.5. Look at that. But it's still not as extreme, again, because we're about 4 months away. I imagine that December is going to look very different in a couple of months, maybe 2 months. By October, these are going to spike. And then it even goes on to May. So again, this is very important, because this is the kind of thing that you can put into your model, right? To see 6 months income moving forward. What can I expect? Is this feasible for me? When am I going to break even? Am I going to break even? Am I going to make it to next year? Am I going to make it to 2027? If I employ the strategy of Airbnb. That's basically what we're seeing over there. Then we're going to look at occupancy, right? Because you can have the rates, but are people actually booking your unit? And for how long are they booking your unit? These are percentiles. So if we look at the 90th percentile, this is typically the cream of the crop, the high end. 90th percentile is basically telling us that now in June, 65% of the properties are booked. That's 90th percentile. Those are the guys that are doing the very best out of everyone. That's not very high, right? Let's look at the 25th percentile. These are the Airbnbs that aren't as popular, right? Low end. So that's showing us that only 12.9, 13% of those properties are booked. Do you know how big the difference that is between 13% and 65%? It's massive. So it's basically telling you that if you're at either extreme, you're either doing very well or you're doing very poorly. So let's discard these two, outside percentiles, and let's keep in the middle stack, 50th to the 75th percentile. Your Airbnb isn't high end, but it's also not crappy. It's basically, number one, it's ticking up, right? It's ticking up because we're getting out of the winter months, but it's also telling me at the same time that, look, if I'm in the 75th percentile or the 50th percentile, I've got between 26 to 44% booked in June, July. It can spike a bit in December between 48 to 74%. Those are healthy numbers. Those are healthy numbers if I've got good reserves behind me, backing me in the months where things are turning down. What you're basically seeing here, this is a correlation. I don't really like this chart. It's a correlation between growth in terms of how many nights are booked, but it's an aggregate for all of the Airbnbs. And this is basically telling us that in July 2025, 6,700 nights were booked, over a total of 732 properties. I mean, you can do an average quickly of that. So I can just say 6,700 divided by 732. That's about 9 nights. Yeah, in July, 9 nights per Airbnb. Yeah, that's something to look at. And then these are available days. What this is basically telling me is that 98% of 98 properties, or 9% of the sample, well, not the sample, the whole universe, is booked for 91 to 180 days. So for 3 to 6 months. So only 9% is booked for 3 to 6 months. And then 28% is booked for 6 months to 9 months. That's where you want to be. You want to be booked from 6 to 9 months, and then for the rest of the 3 months you can figure things out. And then these guys are booked from they booked for 9 to 12 months, so all year round. 62% of properties are booked all year round at Gqeberha. Are available. Oh, that's bad, I read that incorrectly. So these are the available days. So 62% are available, so not booked. 9% are booked for 3 to 6 months, and then 28% are booked for 6 to 9 months. So this is who you want to be. I misspoke. And then in terms of available, so this is who you want to be. The ones that have very few available days, the 9%, only 9%. And then here you've got the booked days. I was confusing the two. So here you've got only 10% that are booked for 6 to 9 months. You've got 28% that are booked only for a month. You've got 1 to 3 months that are booked 32% of the time. And then you've got 29% that are booked for 3 to 6 months. Let's look at the rates. What are the rates telling me? So they're telling me this is the average daily rate. They're basically telling me the average daily rate. Again, we're doing 50th to 75th percentile, much like we explained in the previous chart. These are just the middle of the pack. Nothing extraordinary about the Airbnb, but also nothing low-endy, poor vibes, bad host, low rating. It's not that. That would be the 25th percentile. It's telling us that the average daily rate ranges between 870 per night to about 2,000 Rand per night, which is pretty good, but that's the December number. On an average, July, looking at 970 to about 2K per night, which actually isn't bad. What you want to look at is the average daily range though. So let's look at now July. It was ranging between 450 and 2,000 Rand per night. That's actually not bad. Let's look at the previous July. It was between 359, so it went up, the low end went up, and 2K. So I think the 2K is because of rounding, so we can't actually see if it was 1.8 or 2. You understand what I mean? But I like what I'm seeing here. Let's look at the revenues now. So we've looked at the average daily rate. We've looked at, the occupancy percentage. Now we put it together because occupancy times average daily rate times number of days, obviously, is what gets you to revenue. What revenue is basically telling me is that you can make quite a bit of money, but we already knew that, right? That's why we're watching this video. It's telling me that in December 2022, the low end Airbnbs made 15,000 per month in that month of December, and then the middle stack made about 29,000. Same thing, December 2024, 14,000 and 28,000. And then in July, this past July, they made 7,500 to 14,000. But let's look at the high end. Let's go with the high flyers on revenue. It's telling us that in December 2022, they made 54K. I want to be clear that in December 2022, household had savings, that they were still chopping off or depleting off of savings from COVID. People weren't traveling, people weren't spending as much. The people who were fortunate enough, to retain their jobs, so they had a lot of household savings, and people just wanted to do like a short left everywhere and start traveling, etc., etc. And we had a lot of an influx of international travelers as well. And Gqeberha is a coastal city, so it does absorb some of those. So that number might have been spiking because of that. If we're looking at a more recent December, it saw about 44,000, that month. And then December 2024, also about 50,000. So we can expect that to tick up again this December. Pretty stagnant. I want to say more than 30,000 if you're in the 19th percentile. So if you're a super host with a really nice, apartment. Whereas if you're in the 25th percentile, which are the people who are lost to get booked or their rates are quite low, here you're seeing, around the 4K per month, maybe 4, 5, 6K. That's not a lot per month. And then this is market revenue. That's not really for me and you. That's on aggregate if you're running a portfolio and you're interested in what is Airbnb making, on aggregate. And then the last thing is here we're basically looking at average listings. Active listing. It's basically telling us that a lot of the listings are entire place. That is about 75% or 70% of the listings are entire place. Some of them are private room, like 25%, and very few are shared rooms. That's what you're seeing, and that trend, I want to say, is persisting. It went down in 2024, but it peaked up again. So if you are thinking of getting an apartment or something in Port Elizabeth to list, entire place or private room is surely the way to go. And then in terms of room capacity, it's typically 1 bedrooms. So 450 or 49% of all of the listings are 1 bedroom. And then about 28% are 2 bedrooms. Very few are 4 and 5, because a 4 or 5 bedroom apartment, although it attracts parents and groups of people hosting, like a group of friends that are maybe traveling together, it is more expensive to run outside of the months where you don't have any occupancy. So that's just something to be mindful of. That would explain why these are quite low. It's because of this, the funding is difficult. The funding is quite high for those types of investments. And then you look at guest capacity. So about 1% of properties say only one guest or suitable for one guest, whereas the majority of them are for couples. So that's about 42%, and we've got 6% that are open to about 3 guests. That's basically what you're seeing there. What's interesting is that it's very few, about 7, 8, 9, 10. So those are typically the no parties allowed type of Airbnbs. So obviously there's space here, but again, bearing in mind what we just spoke about here, which is the cost for high room capacity during the year or during the times where you've got very low bookings. How do you run a house with 4 or 5 bedrooms on a woman's salary? Something to keep in mind. And then here you've got a property rating. This is quite important. It tells us what Airbnb expects off of its listing. So value is quite high, 4.74. Check-in process, is it seamless or is it painful? Communication, is it seamless or is it painful? Location, is it in a good location? Can I access Virgin Active when I'm there? Can I walk to the beach? When you said it's walking distance to the beach, is it accurate? Are the pictures exactly what you said they were going to be? Like, did I get what I expected to pay for, or did you catfish me? Is it clean? That's also quite important. So an average score of about 4.8 across all of these metrics. That's just something to show you what users are expecting in Gqeberha. And then property types, we already spoke about them above. 80% of them are about entire places. 20% are private rooms. 6 hotel rooms, which is about 1%. Hostel rooms, sorry. So those are the ones with like dorm vibes, like 6 or 10 people in one room. Very popular in Cape Town, but not so much at Gqeberha, not yet at least. And then this is quite important, the cancellation policy. So it's good to know this, so that when you're setting up your Airbnb profile, you're comparing yourself with your competitors. So 32% are flexible. So you can cancel, they'll refund you, nothing big. 26% are firm. So you have to be sure of yourself when you're saying you're firm. It's basically no cancellation. That's it. So what that basically means is people are less likely to book you because if they're unsure of certain things, like they're not sure if they've got the money, one of their friends still hasn't said yes if they're coming, they haven't booked their flights, etc. So it's a spectrum. Where you want to be, the sweet spot is basically moderate, where maybe you're saying if you cancel within a month, I'll give you 100% of the money. If you cancel within 2 weeks, I'll give you 50% of the money. That to me screams moderate. But let me know what you think about the cancellation policy. But don't let me know as an investor, let me know as an Airbnb or booking.com user. What do you think about the cancellation policy? I'll tell you what I think. I like paying and locking in now if it's a solo trip. But if I'm going with people, I'm booking for people, it's multiple people, I like to take my time. I like to book closer to the time, because again, things can happen. But if it's a solo trip, if I say I'm going somewhere, I'm going to go. If I'm alone, I'm not depending on anything, it's just me and my wallet, then I don't mind firm. But if I'm traveling with people, then I prefer the flexible side of things. Let me know what you guys think. And then minimum nights, so 42%. This is also on the rules, so something that you need to be mindful of so that you are competitive, compared with everyone else. Let me move this here. Yeah, so that you're competitive with everyone else. So 42% say their minimum night is 2% or is 2 nights. 6% say it's 3, and then 20% say 6+ nights at least, and then you've got about 30% that are in this 4 sweet spot. So I think 2 nights is decent, because that's a Friday, that's a Friday, Saturday, so that's a long weekend, and then Sunday morning they check out. Yeah, I think that's pretty decent. Again, you don't want to put an extreme and then people don't book because the rules are turning you off, and the cancellation policy and the minimum night stay, I think those are big issues for travelers. But again, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think on that. Okay. This is amenities. So this is basically what is available at the Airbnbs. This also sets an expectation for your users, right? Because you'll be compared to this in terms of other listings. So ETV, a must, because it's 100%. Fridge 78%, essentials 81%. The nice thing about essentials, I think I saw this on TikTok, is some Airbnb people have got like a cute little basket for females in their bathroom. So if a lady's like booking the Airbnb and she's maybe forgotten her tampons or her pads, she can grab some from the holder, some earbuds, some this and that. So it's giving hotel vibes, but like going an extra mile. And those are super cute, because sometimes your period comes in the middle of nowhere and you're tired, you get what I mean. And then it doesn't also have to be a lot, it just has to be restocked often, because typically the next morning you'll go and you'll buy your own brand of the thing that you like using when you're on your period. So that's just something to I think it's cute. And the essentials: hangers, hair dryer, hot water bottle, hot water kettle, free parking on premises. I think free parking is especially important if you've got 2-3 bedroom, because then you've typically got a family, or you're attracting a family, or you're attracting a group of friends, and they'll want to have a car to drive around, even if they hire a car if they flew. It's typically not like an Uber everywhere single solo traveler, so just be mindful of that. Kitchen, clothing, bed linens, microwave. Just on these amenities, a lot of them need upkeep, so consider if you would host yourself or you would get someone to host. I know a lot of the girlies are on TikTok explaining that they are hosting on behalf of other Airbnb holders. Let me know how it works. Tell me what you know about it out in the comments, because it's something that I want to know more about. It's something that I'm interested in now that I'm thinking of venturing into this, if the bank allows. So let me know what that looks like. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. What do you think about getting someone else to host the property or the Airbnb for you? What does that look like? What type of arrangements are involved in that financially? Is it a profit split, or do they get everything? All right, that's all in terms of the insights and the trends. I'm obviously going to share this link in the comments, but what I now want to show you is basically more on Gqeberha, which is the area that we just discussed. So this is a TPN report that basically tells us about the town of Nelson Mandela Bay. So this is what you would entertain, or this is what you would compare against using my property model to basically tell you, should I do a long-term let versus the short-term, which we just spoke about now. So on a long term, it's basically showing, I'm strictly going to do sectional title, different stats but same meaning for full title. It's basically telling me that there's not a lot of sectional title properties on the market. It's about 600, and they're ranging at about 800,000, 900,000 rand each. That's what we're taking away from that. And here we're basically seeing the places in the city that have a lot of investment properties. We already knew it was Summerstrand, we already knew it was Humewood because we saw it on the Airbnb situation. And investment properties can be short-term or long-term in nature. That's basically what we're seeing across, the board. And then in terms of the rental payment index, it's basically telling us that a big portion, especially Summerstrand and Humewood, a big portion of the renters or tenants here pay typically 5% above, and at above or less than 5%, but like still above and at national average. So you've got good tenants at Gqeberha. And then this is the good standing ratio, which is basically telling us the same as well. It's telling us that 77% of the tenants paid on time. 3% did not pay at all, and then 3% also paid within the grace period, whereas 8.57% paid, but they paid late. And then you've got the residential yield, again for sectional properties, which is basically showing here that it just surpassed the national average and it's currently sitting at about 11.5%, whereas national average is about 11.2. That's what I'm seeing here. And then the effective rate is about, I want to say 10.5. So it says here the effective yield is the return on investment after the percentage of outstanding rental payments have been deducted to show the good standing portion of the gross yield only. What is that saying? It's saying it's coming here, right? And it's only taking the 77%, which is the people that paid on time, and it's leaving everyone else out, and then it recalculates the effective yield at 10.5, which is a bit lower, right? Yeah. Only the good standing, the people who are up to date with their rental, are effectively what count, right? And then you've got the rental price trends, again for sectional title properties. The average rental is about 7,000, and it ranges between 4,000 and 10,000 rand a month for sectional title. And then the rental prices by bedrooms in 2025, we're seeing that 2 bedrooms are renting for about 7,000. More than 2 bedrooms are renting by 9.5. I think this is a bit too wide. You can't really speak to more than 2 bedrooms, because is it 3, is it 5, is it 10? And then here again, we're gonna stick to 2 bedrooms. In 2025, they're about 9.4. They've actually gone down from 2024, and they actually haven't changed from 2023. That might be something that you want to factor in terms of rental increase. It looks flat, which is disheartening. But the range is basically 4.2 to 9.5. So that's something nice to compare to against what you can make in revenue on Airbnb on a month. The rental price distribution for freehold we'll ignore, and then for sectional prices, a sectional title, we're seeing that rental goes from about 5,000 to about 9,000 rand a month. That's the sweet spot in Gqeberha. That's the sweet spot. And then the rental price index, again, it's basically telling us how much they can increase or decrease, or no increase or decrease, which is also quite here, like Woma, Elorraine, Gqeberha. And then you're seeing Summerstrand, you can increase rental a bit by less than 10% to 10%. That's what the green is showing. And then some of them kept them flats, and some of them actually went down. The increases went down, and those are the areas that are highlighted over there, which is quite interesting, right? And then here you've got your property types. The majority of properties, what are we seeing here? The majority of properties are owned or paid off, which is good. But what you also want to see is the properties that are rented. So flats, 9,000 flats out of 12,000 are rented, so about 75%, which tells me that people like renting flats in Gqeberha, which is important if you want to get into this. And then in terms of property sizes, you're seeing that 17% of rental properties are 1 to 2 bed, 15% about 3%, so that's already 30% are 1 to 3 beds, so that's already telling us something. And then flats, you can also do the percentages there, but that's about 5,000 out of, I don't know what the total is, but yeah, I think that's quite interesting. It's something to look at, and here they show it nicely. It's showing us that of the owned, a 1 or 2 bedroom is quite small, whereas you've got about 20,000. We've got quite a lot of 7 to 20 bedroom houses that are owned. But in terms of the rentals, you can see that people like the 1 to 2 and 3 bedroom. Again, like we said, same thing here. You basically want to look at the light blue, which is the flat, the green. which is the flat. That's what you're seeing there. People quite like, the flat. 1, 2 bedroom, 4 bedroom flats. They like that. And then flatlet to room, your room back, if I'm understanding it correctly. The volumes are quite small, but people like that 1 or 2 or 3 bedroom. So it's growing popularity as well. And then in terms of household size, this is telling us about the people in the household. It's basically telling us that 3 people in a household rent 16%, 2 household people rent about 25%, and then single people rent about 34. So 34 plus 24, that's about 60. That's about 75. Now 75 of people are renting a 1, 2, and a 3 bedroom apartment. That's a big proportion. You've got no reason to go and buy a 5 bedroom house in Gqeberha. And then you've got the population group, that's South Africa, I guess. And then you've got language and education. It's basically telling us that 38% of the spoken language in that area is, Afrikaans, 32% is English, and then 21% Batet is Xhosa. And then here it's telling you the education of, the people in the area. And then household head age is also quite important. You've got an older demographic. Gqeberha is it's known to be a retirement town, so that's not too surprising. What you want to know is employment status, though. If you're renting, that's more important to me, because retired people, can they afford to rent? What you're basically seeing is 29%, close to 30% are working in the formal sector, 3% are in the informal, another 3.5% are private household, and then you've got 65% that are working but are unspecified, like where they work. Okay. And then in terms of annual household income, you've got, let's say you've got a property 150 to 600, so that's about 10,000 to 50,000, which is about maybe 8 to 30 in terms of net. So you can rent out a property for about 2,500 to 10,000 rand a month if you're looking at the 30% rule. So what proportion is that? That is 16% plus 12%, so that is 28, maybe 30% of people can rent the properties between between 2,500 rand to 10,000 rand a month. And then here they've got the same thing but in the chart, and then that's basically it. So I've basically shown you 2 things. I've shown you how to value a short-term let. I've shown you how to, multiple times we've spoken about valuing a long-term let, and then I've also shown you what the market looks like for Gqeberha as a whole. That's what that model was basically doing. So I'm going to drop the link in the description. You can play around with this tool. Let me know if you've got questions. Tell me what you think about this. Tell me what you think about short-term lets. Tell me what you value as a traveler when you traveling. I use booking.com, and I value cleanliness. Yeah, I value cleanliness, and I value, I need the place to be exactly what it was online. So when they asked me, was the place, the amenities that they said are they there? And I vote yes. That makes my heart pump custard. Thanks again for watching. I'm gonna cut the video here. Let's chat in the comments.